Welcome to the Live Your Possible podcast, the show about sparking and discovering endless possibilities where we work, live, and play. A safe place where we can help you peel back the cover to what may be blocking you from being your most authentic and happiest self.
Yvonne Alston is an unapologetically authentic amplifier and advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. She established Indelible Impressions Consulting to advance important conversations, education, and competencies to help organizations understand the importance of culture and its impact on the human experience. Her firm and team focus on centering the employee experience, amplifying personal and professional value, and inspiring hearts and minds as they challenge systems of inequity, champion dimensions of diversity, and drive inclusive practices holistically. Yvonne is widely recognized for her courageous work, and I admire her, how she shows up in this work with unapologetic authenticity. On the show, Yvonne talks about indelible impressions and the vulnerable stories from her childhood, which she used as motivation to learn from and break wide open instead of into pieces. She openly honors her mom and legacy with emotional care and connection. We even talked about privilege and how to think about it, not as a dirty word, yet how to use it honorably. Yvonne, I'm beyond excited to have you join the show. Well, welcome, Yvonne. I'm excited to have you here today. I was preparing for the show, and gosh, we just met a little while ago from some mutual friends. Yeah. And we were talking about cultural transformation, human ecosystems, and we were sharing our backgrounds. And I remember just listening to you, looking at you in awe, saying, oh my God, Yvonne is amazing. Like, I am honored to be friends with her, and she's being recognized all over the place for being a top woman in business, a top woman of color in business, entrepreneur of the year. You're an admired woman in business. I mean, these are amazing things. So congratulations. And I'd love to hear from you. You know, what stands out about those recognitions to you?
Oh my goodness. So first of all, I'm so excited to be here and having this conversation with you. I am a big fan of your book. I'm a big fan of your work. I am a true fan and advocate of your authenticity. Like, I love that about you, and I love how we can dish authentically. So let me just say that on the upfront. Gosh, the recognitions. One, didn't see them coming at all. So they were nice surprises. 2022 was a very interesting year for me in many respects. In terms of what they mean, top 25 women in business, I remember some folks in my career path saying, I don't think that you are CEO material. Ooh. Surprise! Number two, top 100 women of color. That one is particularly special to me because I have watched women that were in my sphere of influence, women that I knew personally, some of them even family members who had gotten the recognition. I've known June Archer for over 20 years. He's the person who has organized and created the top 100 women of color, as well as the top 100 men of color in the state. And so I was excited about that. And then when I got valedictorian and I was going to be given the space to stand there on stage in front of this huge crowd of family, friends, and 99 other women of color who are doing amazing things, and to talk to them authentically from my heart about what it means to lead, what it takes to lead, that was like super special to me. And I will also tell you that was the first time that I came out and was very authentic and open about some of the things that challenged me in my life that have brought me to this very moment, like, you know, domestic violence in my home, challenges with anxiety, going to get mental health support, things like that. And there were so many women who came up to me afterwards and were like, just hugged me and were like, thank you. Some of them, that it was just thank you with tears. Some of them were hugging and saying, your story is my story. It's our story. And some of them were saying, you just gave me permission to talk about some of the challenges I had growing up and how that became an impediment at certain points in life, but also for me to rise above and push past. So that one, amongst the other accolades, although they're great, that is the one to me that is just very, very special.
Yeah, that sounds special. And I appreciate you sharing all of that, in particular to some of the challenges that you've had to work through. And like you said, gave me permission for others to say, hey, we are here together. We are one. We are struggling with different things and we could
Right.
overcome the challenges we each have. So we'll definitely dig into those in a little bit. And
Yeah.
you mentioned another word about authenticity. And when I was reading through all the recognitions, I noticed that there's a common theme about unapologetically authenticity. It was really kind of streaming through all of that. And you've mentioned authenticity a few times. Tell me what
Yes.
that means to you. How's that showing up? What is that? Why is that so important to you?
Yeah. So I've been on this journey for quite some time about authenticity. And it wasn't until I left corporate America and was on the cusp of launching Indelible that I thought, well, what is the impact of authenticity,
Mm.
right? In terms of just being yourself and bringing your whole self to every environment. What was important to me is, and especially I would say as a Black woman, is being unapologetic about that, right? And what does that mean? So to your question, it doesn't mean that I just come in, kick down the door, and I am like, if I want to kick my feet up on the table, smoke a cigar, and start cursing left and right. To me, that is not unapologetically authentic. It might be for someone else, but not for me. What it means is that I show up to every environment as I am, with all my layers of intersectionality, right? All of the things that make me authentic. And I no longer apologize for it,
Mm.
right? I don't take down from who I am or what I believe. I don't code switch. I don't assimilate. I don't try to make my presence more palatable for others who might be uncomfortable with my presence for one reason or another. I am me. I am me with the shaved side of my head. I am me with how I love and the deep wells of compassion and empathy that run through me and hopefully pour out into others. That's what I mean by being unapologetically authentic.
Yeah, just being you, and it sounds like a very positive and amazing you, uplifting you, trying to bring truly the best out in other people. I've seen you in some of the interactions we've been in, giving ideas and tips and trying to help people realize that they can do so many amazing things. They can do better. And I love how you actually dove into the word love, right? You have a care
Mm.
for different people and humans, I think equally. I've seen you in action, which is really special, which is really cool.
Oh, thank
And
you.
talk,
And I love that about you too,
oh, thanks.
because you have that same energy and intentionality. And I think that's key. And at the same time, although you and I are both very intentional about it,
Yeah,
as well, it's very intuitive for us. So I dare say you are very unapologetically authentic yourself. So
I appreciate it.
yeah.
Yeah, I work on it every day. I think we have to just be aware and be conscious about what we're doing and truly what our intentions are and how we're impacting others. And are people smiling, and are they opening their eyes? Are they present? Are we just walking
Mhm.
by, not noticing each other? And I think we need to just slow down. And I think we're both doing that. And I appreciate that so much about you. And you started this business called Indelible Impressions. I'd love to learn a little bit more about what you're doing there. How'd you come up with the name? I love the name too.
So, in true unapologetically authentic way, I am a woman of faith and I make no bones about that. I don't try to push religion on anyone. As a matter of fact, I'm not confined by religion. I focus on the relationship that I have with God. And as such, I was in prayer about moving from having this 22 plus year corporate career to launching my own business, wanting to make impact from the outside in, understanding and being kind of hamstring and limited of when you're inside organizations trying to do the work that Indelible does, and being very led towards making an indelible mark. The term indelible I've always loved because I think it's such an elegant term, and it also has so much power and strength. Indelible literally means not easily removed, not easily erased. And that is essentially what I feel called to do. right, is to make an indelible impression upon people's hearts and minds, not just so that I can do, myself and my team can do the work of employing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging into various types of organizations, but so that individuals can also go and make their own indelible impressions, right? And that's how we galvanize as a society, and we can actually make systemic change for the better. So it is both, I dare say, both spiritual and natural for me in terms of the name of the business.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Truly authentic as well.
Yes, and I will say one of the coolest things that I have heard since inception is that when folks work with us, we have oftentimes, if not one, multiple people coming back saying, "You lived out your namesake."
Oh, that's cool.
And, or, "Wow, what an indelible impression you have made, like you did the thing." And so having some marketing and communications and brand background, it's like, yes, you did the thing. So kind of like when you ignite happy, you do
Exactly.
that, right?
Uh,
So it's just the ultimate compliment, I guess, in certain
yeah,
respects, is
yeah, I
I've
agree with
done the thing. Yeah. And my soul feels good about it as much as my head and my heart do.
Yeah, I love all of that, and it's a lasting impression. It sounds like,
Mhm.
as happiness is also kind of viewed as one of those things that can come and go. It's having those impressions and these feelings that actually can be part of our everyday, and being
Mhm.
present. Being authentic, understanding the impacts we could have. And I'm interested to learn more too about the impacts you're having. I know you talk about being an amplifier of DE and I plus B, and I'd love to know what you're taking, how our company is receiving, today's needs around DE and I plus B. And the plus B is something that's interesting too, because I always feel the B, the belonging, should be
Mhm.
first, yet it's kind of like feeling like it's an add-on at the end. So how are people embracing this work? What are you noticing out there today, and how's this all fit together?
So the B was really important to indelible, because what we saw it, and the reason why it's at the end, is because we see it as an outcome of when diversity, equity, and inclusion work together synergistically and successfully, you get belonging, right? That is the outcome we should be driving towards. But you have to employ the former three well. People have to understand it, understand its impact upon themselves, their in the workplace, their colleagues, in a broader sense, their communities, right? And then understanding that people will feel a greater sense of belonging when, again, that's done in a really good, intentional, and impactful way. And so what I see for some of Indelible's clients, and just a lot of folks that I'm tied to who are in this space as well, is not looking just at 2023 from an economic impact standpoint, right? Because everybody's talking about recession and how that's impacting DEIB commitments in the space. And I feel like that's a whole nother conversation. But what I will say from a 10,000 foot view is that there's more openness to it. The societal and racial recognitions and reckonings that we saw in our country, kind of going back to 2020 with George Floyd, and even prior to, and then as topics have been brought to the forefront, and I dare say right up under people's noses, I think that people are much more aware, and we are seeing movement towards some of the performative statements and actions by organizations, and instead them really understanding why this is important, why diversity, equity, and inclusion matters to people from all walks of life, all spectrums of diversity, as well as people who are kind of on the fringes, who don't think that they're impacted by it. But we have plenty of data that demonstrates everyone in society is impacted by DEI, or the lack of, when it's not present, certainly. And so we're seeing a movement, I think, away from what seemed, I guess, for lack of a better term, fake And again, I guess the proper word would be performative versus like real intentionality, like CEOs going, I get it. And I'm starting to understand why I need to have a personal commitment to this that transcends even the organization. I need to understand my why for saying that this is important to my organization and making those steps myself as we deploy it throughout the organization and try to ensure that it is not just a moral imperative, but a cultural imperative for everyone. And so it's been nice to see that movement. And I think also, at least for myself and my team, not just intellectualizing it, but cracking open the heart to say, hey, we could talk DEIB all day long and give you a head knowledge of it, but that's not the place of sustainable change. The place of sustainable change is the heart. Because if I can change your heart, I can not only help just change the way that you think, we can help change the way that you feel and how you behave as a result. There's another level of accountability, right? That's there. And then it goes from something people learn and do habitually to who they are. And that, I have to tell you, is so beautiful to witness. It's so beautiful to see people employing it and taking it even outside of the workplace, right? Taking it into all their other areas of life. And sometimes even coming back to us and being like, oh my gosh, my relationships have been better. We had a CEO come back to us at one point and was like, my kid finally felt comfortable coming out to me and my spouse because I was employing the work. She was seeing me doing the work on myself, even here at home. And it opened up, it built a bridge to her that was, failing or didn't exist prior to. And that to me is the epitome of success of indelible impressions.
That's beautiful. I have chills. I have to say that these type of outcomes, they do impact our full lives. It's just not our work lives. When we embrace, the work, whether we embrace how we care for people differently. And that's what we're doing, right? I think you talk about empathy and collaboration all the time, using head and heart as an approach. And I love how you connect to that. I think some key words that I heard you say, it's just not about the words. It's just not about seeing what's going on. It helps to recognize that there are some inequalities, or there's a need for better sense of belonging, like how we open the show, how we're actually seeing each other. We're being heard, we're present. Yet it's actually that level of feeling. When you actually feel it, your heart pings. I feel like that's the difference, where people will act and they could actually see other people's eyes shift, get bigger, maybe even sit in or step into a conversation, maybe share something that maybe wouldn't have done in the past. Sounds like that's what you're seeing when leaders step in and actually do the work and genuinely believe in this work, not ask people to go out and do these initiatives and let it be the flavor of the month or the year. Actually step in, because this is not only the right thing to do, it's actually the best thing for ourselves and our people and our business for long-term prosperity or results or whatever it is that's important to these leaders and their people.
Yeah, personal success is critical in the workplace.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it. When we think about personal success, if we're not looking at it on the level of just financial gain or title, right? Climbing into some type of hierarchy, but you can look around at the people that have chosen your organization to be a part of, chosen to fall under your leadership, to be guided by you. What greater success is there than to have people say, oh, not just this person's successful because of a title or because of, the numbers, right? But to actually look at that individual and say, that person is successful because of their content of character, because of how they lead, right? How they lead, not just what they lead and quantifications of that, but how they lead. And I would follow that person anywhere. I would follow that person into the fire through turbulent economic times. There will be loyalty and satisfaction and retention and all of these great things. not just because this person pays top dollar or I've been able to ascend the ranks. And so there's been opportunity. Yes, all that matters, but how they see their people, how they engage with their people, how they care for their people, I think that is incredibly powerful. And as a leader, I will say of my own team, that's what brings me the greatest joy. It's not just the opportunities that we get so that there's that economic value to them, but more so of like, wow, we get to galvanize together. We get to use the best parts of our heads and hearts every day to bring out the best parts of others' heads and hearts every day. And that is just, for us, that's the epitome of success. And for me as a leader, definitely that's where it's at.
Yeah, you could tell you're into this. You're energized. It's contagious. I love it. You care for your people. You're not just asking and showing people how to do this. You're actually doing the work. You're doing this hard work that it could be so natural of who we are. And it comes back to your level of authenticity, right? That's how you're wired. And it's amazing. It's coming through even here in this discussion, which is really cool. Like just curious too, like how did you get to this point, right? You said 22 years in corporate America, a lot of marketing in your background, and then a pandemic hits and all of a sudden you're starting a company. It's a courageous move. How did you get here? Were there any triggers, or did you just kind of have a lifelong dream that you wanted to kind of step into, or what happened?
I would like to say, I believe that this was always in the making. Again, as a woman of faith, I think every experience that we have, even the hardest moments, are always purposeful. One of the greatest quotes that I love from John Lewis, I love many of them, God rest his soul, was he mentioned one time about talking to his children, and one of them was lamenting over something that had occurred and said, why is this happening to me? And he told the child, that's not the best question. The better question to ask is, why is this happening for me? And that is something that I think before even hearing that, I had come to realize is everything is purposeful under the sun. And so when I say that this was always kind of in the making, I had gone through a really rough childhood. I have a mom, God rest her soul, who battled with substance addiction for a good majority of my life. I grew up in public housing and a lot of financial insecurity, domestic violence in those settings. I, just witnessed and saw a lot that was really, really hard. And so, ironically, while that could have made me very bitter, I believe in many ways it actually, and it's funny, it's only one letter, it made me better, right? The difference between the E and the I in the outcome. Right? I could have allowed all of it to make me bitter. Instead, I used it to make me better. And as a result, I was still able to move past those challenges and not just be so angry and frustrated and, lashing out at life and people. And instead, it developed into these great wells of empathy and compassion for others. It took me a long time to feel that for myself. I felt it much more for others before I ever felt it for myself. But I think that played a key role. And then wanting to come out of those situations and not be necessarily a negative product of my environment. I think I just worked really hard. I was able to get a full academic scholarship to Quinnipiac University, which was Quinnipiac College back when I went. But do that and then go on to have this great career, but still never feeling like I could really be myself, right? And there's a lot of individuals who identify as Black people, regardless of how you identify gender-wise or gender expression or orientation, that have been socialized to believe that we had to leave parts of ourselves outside of the workplace, outside of the room, right? If we ever were able to get into decision-making rooms, we had to leave parts of ourselves outside the door. We had to code switch or assimilate, right, to the environment. And in order to survive, in order to thrive, in order to close economic gaps from perhaps where we began to where we wanted to be. And so I felt like there was always this part of me that was warring against that, right? That I never felt truly successful. And I couldn't figure out what that was because I'm looking at myself going to different organizations, climbing the ladder, being financially secure, going from public housing to the burbs, having the ability to have economic stability, all of those things that really should be making me happy. Great bonus, 401k matches, right? The right wardrobe, all these things. But putting head to pillow at night, but not feeling whole. Believe earnestly it was because I wasn't functioning in my purpose. I wasn't aligning my life with my purpose. I was aligning it with expectations, societal expectations, expectations of myself, wanting to leave the past in the past, even though understanding it was all purposeful, but kind of like leaving it over there, being kind of, I don't know how to explain it, maybe separate from it, even though I realized like it was building blocks of who I had become as a woman, as a Black woman, as a wife, as a mother, as a, human being. And so it wasn't until there was a series of, losses, as well as that wake up call, right? That happened very early in the pandemic where I was like, we don't know how much time we have left on this earth, unless someone decides to, God, forbid, take their own life. Whatever time I have left, it can't be this, right? Like what it was. It can't be this. Like I want there to be legacy. I want to do something that has meaning and that leaves legacy in the earth, that leaves the world a slightly better place, at least a corner of it. And in what I'm doing, this isn't it. And this is why I'm unhappy. I'm not functioning in purpose. And it was like, what would that look like if I did that? What would it look like if I shook off all the societal expectations and trappings of how we define success? Could I be fully successful in a way that regardless of title and economics and all these things, that I could feel that I could put head to pillow every night and breathe out this sense of peace that comes with functioning in purpose. And in prayer, it spoke so clearly to me of like, if you give me this thing, you give me everything else in your life, girlfriend. If you give me this thing, there will be no lack. And Darren, there has been no lack. My husband was on board immediately. He's like, we'll sell the house, we'll cut the cable, we'll do whatever we need to do. I see you, I feel you. I feel like, yes, this is your purpose, this is your calling. My personal board of directors, the people closest around me were like, one of the key people said to me, look me dead in the eye, and she's an SVP at Viacom, and she said, we've been waiting for you. And that was such, you talk about having chills, like that was such a moment of validation. And then that was it. I resigned. And in a month's time, I stood up indelible, and sometimes it was duct tape and bubble gum, like building the plane while flying it. But now we're a team of, now 9 across the US, supporting for-profit, nonprofit, paramilitary, school systems, awards, right? And it's not because I have the best business brain. I don't think that's true. I don't have an MBA. I didn't go to business school. There's no Wharton in my background, but there's purpose. There's purpose. And as a result of purpose, there's passion, there's perseverance. There are all these things that undergird the success. But most of all, I dare say purpose, because I think when you tap into purpose, there's nothing like it. I've never been more creative. I've never been more effective. I've never been more innovative. I've never been more me. And I've never felt so doggone good or successful in my entire life as much as I feel now.
I just want to sit here and listen to your story for the next hour. Keep going. What a beautiful set of events, and just your willingness to go to places that aren't so light, and
Mhm.
maybe just times of darkness, and there's learning in darkness at times, and I applaud you for working through that and dreaming bigger, or seeing that there's other people that are struggling with those
Yeah.
similar elements and struggles. That it sounded to me you wanted to break through to not only help yourself, you wanted to help out other people, and other people that can dream and actually take action like you did, and do wonderful things and give back. And I love that you used the word legacy, and how you want to make the world a better part, even if it's a smaller part, even though I think you're making a pretty big impression around the world. I'm in awe just listening to you share your story. And I think it's amazing. I adore it. I love what you're doing, and you're authentic. And I kept saying that to myself. You're unapologetically authentic, and it's coming through over and over again. And your sense of thinking and beliefs, and how these are shaped over time. And I'm
Yeah.
sure there's, these lessons have been, growing inside you. And I think you've been seeing and making connections. And are there any other life connections that you've seen to get to where you are? And I know you talked about purpose as well. And I don't know if that ties into that. And I'd love to just hear a little bit more, because I just can't get enough,
Yeah.
because I did get goosebumps when you were talking about, we've been waiting for you. I'm like, that's perfect.
Yeah. So I think that there have been people along the journey away. My mom, she passed away in 2021, very untimely, not from any addiction or anything else, just some convergence of health issues. And she made the decision of like, you know what, it's been enough for me. No
Mm.
DNR, no DNI, I'm ready to go. Can you support that? And it was like, yes, because she used to always say you get one life. And so, I felt like I could support her decision, because we had gotten to this beautiful place. We had gotten to this beautiful place of forgiveness. We had gotten to this beautiful place to the point where the eulogy that I gave at our funeral, part of that was, I don't know if you've ever heard Teddy Roosevelt's famous speech, The Man in the Arena. And Brene Brown uses parts of it for her series on Daring Greatly. And even before that, I had heard Teddy Roosevelt's speech way back when I was in college. And it really does talk about the person who is in the arena of life, fighting, marred, bloody, beat up by life, but isn't afraid to stay in the arena,
Yeah.
isn't afraid to stay in there and fight, isn't looking for the quickest door of escape, but says, I'm going to fight for the life that I want. Right. And I was able to not just forgive my mom, but also see the strength. Talk about legacy, like to see a legacy of strength in her that I couldn't realize or appreciate as a youth. Her mom passed away when she was 7. She dealt with having a father who became a single parent of her and her sister, and had an alcohol addiction himself, right? And physical violence in that setting. And so one thing begot the other, and talk about legacy, right? And like, but also like negative legacy, which we want to stop, right? Generational traumas, but then also like her fight through it all. And I was able to look back as I held her, literally her body, as she transitioned and took her last breaths of life, that I never thought that I would be in the bed holding her.
Mm.
And I'm a little emotional, but that's a good thing. I never thought in life that I would be holding her and saying it's okay to go. And you were an amazing mother. And the things that you taught me, you have no idea. You have no idea what you've taught me. And am proud to be Carol's daughter. Carol Yvonne Marie, I am proud to be your daughter. And I never thought I could say that, because I spent so much time in a good chunk of my life being ashamed of her. But I saw her differently, and I saw her beautifully. And I saw all this strength in her. And it was like, I couldn't talk about purpose in the pain. Like, I couldn't be who I am today, but for being her daughter, being birthed into those circumstances. And yet, having her still see me and saying, Yvonne, you get one life, live it to the best. Oh my gosh, you've got a chance to go to college. Do that. You've got a chance to create a better life for yourself. Do that. You get a chance to travel and see the world. Do that. All the things she couldn't do, she wanted for me. And so when I think about that, or when I think about my bonus dad that I grew up with, and how we didn't have next to anything, but he'd give a shirt off the back to anybody who needed it, how our community coalesced around each other and made sure that we supported others who didn't have, even though we ourselves had very little, right? We would give to each other. We would barter in our physical community, right? I think about Les Saunders, who was my Middletown High School guidance counselor, that he is so well known and he is so prolific in that community that he looked at me and said, you don't have to function and be determined by your surroundings. You are in this, but you are not of this. And this doesn't have to be all you see for yourself. So there are people that poured into me and created foundations in me for the woman that I am today, who is not perfect, who is filled with purpose, and who wants to give back and make those indelible marks, because these people all made indelible impressions upon me, every single one of them.
Yeah, I mean, let's take a second. Oof. Like we got ourselves back to tying how you're bringing that forward. I mean, I literally at one point here, I felt like my whole body just went numb. I'm like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. You're carrying your mom's legacy forward. She saw the beauty in you, and you got to see the beauty in her. And what a gift. And what a gift that you're giving it back, and your bonus dad giving to others. And in Les's quote was phenomenal. The actions you're taking, like you're a leader by example. You're a change maker. You're showing that anything is possible. Anything good is possible when we put our minds and our hearts and our authentic selves together.
Yeah. And I think that's the best thing we could do for ourselves. And it will have an effect on others around you. It can't help but to. And, again, I could have let a lot of different circumstances in life make me bitter, but I chose the E. I chose the better over and over and over again. And it wasn't just a single choice, right? It was making that choice over and over and over again, which is really hard to do in the face of some really dark and challenging circumstances, right? And it doesn't mean that I respond to everything perfectly and always with like those and whereas like so I get really PO,
we all do.
I'm human,
I don't know if you just came up with the E, making things from bitter to better. I think that's so fun. It's the simple things like that, right? It's a simple choice of a word we choose or the letter we want to have. Like I'll often talk about, since I love talking about possibilities, like the word impossible. If you add, this just one little mark, and it turns into I'm possible.
Yes.
Just a shift. And it's a matter of what can I do differently to grow from this, not beat myself up. Yet I could break through instead of into pieces.
Oh, wait, can we just pause on that? I can break through instead of into pieces, right? And it's a mind shift, right? And then it becomes a heart shift. And I think that is so, so important. Like you said, it's just, people always think that there are these big things that I have to do to make a difference in my life or in the lives of others. And sometimes we are called to do those really big things, but that is born out of doing the smaller things, right? Like you said, like instead of the impossible, I'm possible. What does that look like? I'm possible in this setting, in this way. I'm possible in this area of life, my intelligence, where I can go. I'm possible, right? To the bitter and versus the better. I didn't come up with that. Actually, it was a woman named Marcia who spoke into my life when I was going through a divorce from my daughter's father. And she said to me, she said, you can't control what has happened and what was done. And she said, but here's what you do get a choice in. Are you going to be bitter or are you going to be better? It's a single letter, but it will make all the difference for your trajectory in how you go through this and how you come out on the other side. And I was like, like, say that?
Yeah,
Like,
that's awesome. That's so beautiful. It's
and
amazing.
so I didn't phrase it, but I have carried that through at the hardest moment, saying, okay, what am I going to decide? What am I going to do? Is it going to be this? Okay. Am I going to be better or am I going to be better? Okay, maybe I want to be bitter for just a moment. I'm going to be bitter about this, but I'm going to get to that E really fast.
I think it's a
Or,
great point.
yeah, I'm going to get to the E immediately. But yes, please say, what are you thinking on that?
I think it's a great point that it's okay to be bitter for a minute. It's like life isn't perfect and we have darkness. We have points where we're frustrated, we're angry. It's how we work through it and how we handle it. That's how we get measured most of the times. Like how do we address these levels of moments where are we handling it with grace? Are we actually handling it with the right intentions? Are we being our happy, authentic selves? Because these are the places where we work through things. And this is why I love the phrase of breaking wide open, because I think we've all had moments where we just don't think we're worthy, or we have anxiety, or we have self-doubt, and we just break into pieces, or we have failed. We kind of perceive that we failed and we can't get through it. And I think your messages help us understand we can break through these components about how we listen to it. How do we look inside? How do we then invite the world in and move forward? It doesn't mean ignore the past. It doesn't mean pretend you're somebody different. It's about taking the steps you can be and you're born to be, and you're living it out loud. You're a living example. So I applaud you. And then just want to give you a virtual hug for the moment you shared earlier too, by the way. I'm here for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You touched on failure, and I've been asked whether it's been in, podcast interviews, magazines, whatever, right? Even at some of the workshops and speaking gigs, people have said to me, how do you define failure? And I said, and I've always said this, and I think I felt this probably at least from like, I'm 49 now, so I would say at least since 30. I believe there is only failure when we don't learn, right? Not that something didn't work out the way we wanted it to, whether that's if you are in business and there's a failed product launch, right? Or you fail to make the numbers, or some people, their kids go off and do things that you couldn't possibly conceive of, and you feel failure as a parent, right? And those are just two examples. I don't think failure is not achieving the outcome that you would hope for. I think the only failure there is in not learning from the experience. If you just brush it off and you keep moving like that had no impact, and I'm not going to take any lessons learned from that, that's the failure, right? But as long as you learn from the thing, no matter what it is, no matter if that's a small learning or something magnanimous that changes your life, that for me is the only failure.
Yeah.
Is if we don't learn.
Yes. Someone else I've heard, Gary Ridge, coined the term learning moments. So dive it into what we can gain from any situation. And it's beautiful. He's going to be an upcoming guest too. I should introduce you both. And he's fabulous. The thing is, what's really interesting is I had a moment, as you know, where I had an awakening, and I recognized I had some level of unconscious biases, and I was terrified, and I could have pushed it away. I could have remained with self-preservation and fear of what I would have been giving up, or acknowledging that I had failed people or pushed people away. The things that were there in my head, I could have just pushed it aside. Yet my heart took over and said, no, I'm not being my best self or the best human being I can be. And I needed to learn in the moment, even though it was painful. It was awful. Like I cried. Like I cried. Like I didn't think you could cry in the workplace. And I cried in the workplace in front of 24 colleagues, a very diverse group of people. And it was the best thing that's ever happened to me, to see the world differently. Thank you.
Yeah. Yay for crying.
It's learning. What I learned what I was failing and not doing. And that's what I didn't break I didn't personally break into pieces because I could have, because I really
You
felt
broke
like
open.
my bubble burst and I thought I was suffocating. Where I realized is the bubble actually expanded. So I was able to welcome the world in. And I realized I wasn't using the privilege that I had responsibly. I wasn't using it honorably. And I know these words are on your LinkedIn page about
Yes,
power
yes.
and
Oh my
privilege.
God. Like I'm like totally leaned in, like say
Well, I'd
more.
love to know more. Like, I think you say this on your LinkedIn page about these aren't dirty words. And I'd love to know a little bit
Privilege
more
and
why
power.
you say that. Yeah.
Well, of course, I have to applaud, and I meant that applaud earnestly, because the more that people understand that we need to be human, right? We weren't born in a suit. So we need to be human
True.
with one another. And especially for leaders to be vulnerable and say, I don't know what I don't know, right? And we see this a lot in the DEIB space, especially with white male leaders like yourself, right? Like
Mhm.
to say, wow, I have certain privileges and power ascribed to me, and I'm not using those things well in this space, that I'm not being as equitable and inclusive as I could be. I'm having my own reckoning, and I'm willing to hold myself accountable to that. I'm willing to hold up the mirror and say, Darren, come on, homie, like you can do better, right? This isn't the best version of you, not just for yourself, but for everyone else that you're leading. And so I think that's so beautiful. And I think if more leaders did that, if more, I will at least speak to across the dimensions of diversity of Black and white, which is not the only dimension of diversity by a long shot, but just juxtaposing those two things, I think that that would build such a bridge to people of difference, whether that's Black and then the intersectionality aspects of Black people. I think that's huge. Privilege and power. So majority of the time when people talk in the space of DEI and DEIB and they start talking about privilege, often the conversation stays at white privilege, right? And that has a tendency to elicit a lot of defensiveness, a lot of frustration. What does that mean? I'm a white person. I didn't grow up privileged. I didn't grow up with wealth. I didn't grow up with, multiple cars in the driveway. Maybe I grew up in public housing. Maybe I grew up in an environment of drug addiction and family violence and things like that. I'm not privileged. And so it creates this combativeness, right, in the environment, which
Mhm.
I don't think is very helpful to the larger conversation, right? It hits us against one another. It's not to say that white privilege is not a thing. It is, because of our history, because of colonialism, and things that people in the room today didn't create, didn't build. And that's why there's that initial defensiveness that's often there. And so when we talk about privilege and power, my perspective, indelible perspective, is that privilege and power don't need to be dirty words. It's really about how we use it, right? And that every single one of us who is alive today has certain levels of privilege and power. Now, we might not all define it the same way, and it might look different for people in different walks of life. So I will use myself as an example. I consider myself as a Black woman, and where I am at in life right now, extremely privileged. And I do have certain powers. I am privileged because I now live in the burbs. So I don't have the same economic persecutions that I had before. That is a privilege to me. I was able to go and get a formal education at Quinnipiac. That's a privilege to me. I have credit cards, so I have access to disposable income and wealth. That's a privilege. I am able-bodied. I don't need a wheelchair at this point in time, or anything else in order to care for myself and my family. That's a privilege. How I use my privilege, how I use, whether it's economic power or power now as having CEO in my title for whatever power that yields me. I think it's about how we use it. that makes all the difference. And coming to understand what you said about how I was showing up, how I was using my power and privilege, and coming to know you, I don't think that you were using it in elitist ways or to persecute others. I do think, as you've conveyed to me, you weren't using it to build and create power and privilege for others. And that's the kicker. That's the thing with power and privilege, is are we using our power and privilege for others who don't have power and privilege?
Yeah, I love how you broke that down, and I think you make it safe for us to talk about these words, and it's so important that we step in to understand what these words actually mean for each of us individually, and where we are on the spectrum of these words, because I have a feeling the listeners have levels of privilege, and there's times maybe we didn't, or they didn't, and we broke through. Or there are elements where we know there's people on either side. Some people have more, some people have less, and not get caught up in the words. Because what's just so interesting as you're talking through this, I have so many feelings and emotions thinking about what you're sharing. And, the first thing is I recently did a talk, and I was asked not to use the word privilege. We had a discussion about it. And I said, fine, well, I'll use a different word. I'll use the word platform.
Advantage. It's a thesaurus.
Yeah.
Like,
I use platform because my voice is heard or was heard differently because of who I am. And I needed to kind of move what I used as a metaphor was a megaphone. I needed to move my megaphone away from my voice being heard to someone else's. So that's sharing platform. It's not about having to say the word privilege. It's about doing the best for other people. And as you said, what's our intention? Are we trying to help people break through? Are we helping people to be their best selves as their authentic selves? Yes, yeah, and yes. I would also say that when I was going through this myself, I was pushing people away. I had a purpose before I went into this event where I had my awakening, where I was going to bring out the best in people all around me every day. So you are reading me in a correct way. However, I wasn't doing that for everybody. I was doing that in my bubble of sameness. So people that were like me. So that was my aha, where I said, oh my God, I'm pushing people away that I shouldn't. And I wouldn't be here had I not really put my arm around the world to say, no, I need to expand my bubble, and I need to see the light that's inside of all of us, because there's a beautiful light inside of all of us. And we need to not let our privilege or the items and areas we've been taught to blind us or to hide us from what beauty is really sitting there in front of us. Like Yvonne, like I admittedly would not have known would I be here with you had I not gone through that awakening. Now I see the beauty in you. I see the amazingness in you. I see how you're paying it forward every day. You're sharing all these stories today. You're part of so many different panels. I think NASA has you on their board. I know you're working with different boards that reflect back to your past, right? You're taking your lessons.
yeah.
You're sharing this and making people better with the panels you're joining, with the work you're doing. And I'm a product of the work that you're doing. Like I know what can happen, and I've seen companies turn around, and I just want to say I absolutely adore you, and I love what you're doing, the impact you have in the world. I'm honored to be your friend, and I'm here to support you in any way I can. And I hope we get to work together in different ways, because I think we can make some great impacts. And I just wanted to say, thank you for being on the show, and I have a feeling we'll be back at this again at some point in the future.
I completely agree. So, wow, like you got me like tearing up, running my mascara early this morning, Darren. Damn. But I will say that I am always so moved by your humility and your transparency and vulnerability, right? That's what's needed in the world more than ever. We are so polarized in society and across communities. It requires us to build and break down the barriers, right, that separate us, to see that you as a white male leader, me as a Black woman leader, we can bridge the gap of difference, and have found so much beautiful commonality between us, and not just in how we think, but how we feel and the impact that we want to have on the world that most people would not assume that we could overcome certain things so easily, right? And I don't necessarily think that they're easy, but when you have purpose and intention leading the way, and you
Yes.
let your heart lead more than your head, I think that the challenges and the barriers become that much easier to hurdle, right? We keep laying track over the hurdle, bridging closer and closer to one another
Yes.
so that we're walking up and down that bridge. You're able to walk over to my side. I'm able to walk over to your side without speed bumps and stumbling blocks, right? Because our heart is leading the way. So I want to thank you for that. Yes, I would gladly be back on any platform, anywhere with you. Doesn't matter. As long as schedule permits, I will be there. And I know that you will be the same for me. I know we're talking about doing some really cool, impactful stuff together, you and I, bringing some other voices to these important conversations, and giving others permission to use their lived experience, their professional experiences for the education, edification, and building up of others while breaking down barriers. And I say, heck yeah, all day long. Let's get it. I'm glad to be on this show anytime you ask.
Awesome.
And it's been a great way to kick off the week. So thank you. Thank you for the space. Thank you for honoring my truth, my experience, both lived and professional. And yeah, and thank you for your contributions to the world, because it's really freaking beautiful.
That means the world. Thank you so much. And your level of transparency and willingness to share is amazing. You are a leader by example. You're helping to show people that it's safe to do the same thing. And I'm with you. Let's make an impact together, show people what is possible when we open up our hearts and connect it to our minds and share emotions with care and empathy and compassion, the right emotions for us to make a big difference. And everything you said is spot on. And I love the fact that you are a living bridge for our world. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. And to all your listeners, this is the guy. I'm just saying, like, get the book, talk about transparency, right? And experience. He divulges a lot. His career as an executive to what he does now. It's a beautiful journey. You want to get this book. You want to get connected with this guy to live and grow, learn, and do better. Darren Tully.
Thank you very much. Amazing. My heart grew a little bit today. Yvonne is as genuine as it gets, thriving with a purpose to amplify each of us to new heights. It is fascinating that we are different on the surface and where we come from. However, we are both on a similar path to using our hearts to explore better ways for all people and to put us all on an equal playing field where endless possibilities thrive. I love hearing her story and how she vulnerably shares her learnings for us to reflect on, coupled with ideas we can implement to experience personal and societal growth. Here are a few ideas from our talk to consider experimenting with for yourself. Number one, being authentic is a gift you were all born with, and Yvonne is a living example of what is possible when we do. Pause during the day to reflect on whether you are being fake, someone else, or your happy, authentic self, and notice where you want to change and reconnect back into. Two, delve into your struggles, memories, or areas holding you back, and learn from Yvonne and how she was able to find the positive learnings and take the small steps to overcome these, live more freely in the future, and live out your legacy. Three, think about the privilege you may have and look at it, not as a word that creates divisiveness, yet as something you can honorably share with others. It is not about giving something up, and it's about sharing what others may not have for the greater good. Experiment with some small steps you could take to better others, and I promise you will beam too. After the show, our conversation continued as I remained in awe as I listened to Yvonne speak and share more about her story. And she mentioned the word shame, which sparked an interesting discussion. I was surprised that she had shame at all about anything she's doing because she's so amazing. So we agreed we needed to dig into that as a follow-up to this show. So stay tuned for that show coming up as part 2 in a continuation of this wonderful discussion today. In the meantime, Gain comfort in learning from our more harrowing moments to help you ignite your happy, authentic self and live your possible.
That's all for today's episode. If you liked the show, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Live Your Possible dares to unlock your fullest potential and become an avenue for others to do the same. Join the community by visiting ignitehappy.com. It's time to discover endless possibilities with equal opportunity for all. See you again next week for more insights on how you can live your possible.